I'm going to show you guys a cool slide that talks about the thermodynamics of entropy. Just to give you, for anyone who's into Robert Anton Wilson, he's got beautiful ideas of how certain patterns in nature just crop up of themselves. This is a bit of extra junk, and I'm gonna say it, but I'm gonna try to explain it better. The extraterrestrial meta-engineering of our terrestrial unfolding appears to be a product natural to intelligence and planetary life. Yeah, so before we get into that, let's just see what I mean here. So entropy means chaos. It's the same word. They're synonyms. So non-entropy must be like non-chaos. It's order, it's organized evolutionary complexity. For some reason, these two spring from each other throughout time constantly. This is supposed to be a clean, what's it called? Parabola. It's not supposed to, it's tighter on this one than it is on this one. But anyway, see, we have time, which is infinite. Yeah, I should explain this before I explain this. Everything is a mutual arising with something else. This is an old Taoist thing. If bigness exists, smallness must exist by contrast. If, I've got this pen here, right? What kind of quality could you describe to it? Compared to me, my head, my big head, this pen is small. But compared to an atom, this pen is big. What is it really? Well, it's got a quality because we have other qualities to contrast. Qualities come from the contrast of things. So if we were to express reality, or that must come from non-reality, and that's a whole other thing in itself. For me, infinity exists. I'm gonna bring this together. For me, the finite 10,000 things of reality come and are contained in the infinity, because infinity is. What else could it be? I always like to say with the Big Bang Theory, what was it? Where did it come from? What was it in? People say of the Big Bang, well, there's this what was the first cause in existence? Well, a bunch of atoms came together and went bop, and things started happening. Okay, well, what was that in? Nothingness? So that nothingness must be something, right? It's just been going forever. That's why I say infinity has been going on forever. Now, if infinity is going on forever, then it must be, I like to say, that reality is all that can possibly be expressed, happening somewhere in one of the quantum multiverses that existence expresses. I think, therefore I am. There's something. You're listening to me talk. So there's something. It's not nothing. And if there is something, what must it be? If infinity is infinity, that means it contains somewhere, somewhen, all possibilities that could possibly be. And if it's expressing all possibilities that could possibly be, that must mean that there's a yin and a yang. There must be a big and a small, there must be an up and a down, and they must dance in all of the variegated possibilities that could possibly ever thought to be exist or to be. This is some of my acid talk, if you're wondering what those 5 grams of mushrooms in the basement are going to get you, it's going to be this kind of talk. So if reality is expressing itself through all the different shades, there might be primary archetypes which spin or which change and transform in different varieties in order to express everything that there is. One of these qualities of reality we can call entropy or chaos, and non-entropy or order. We notice that for whatever reason, evolution is, for some reason, intelligence and organic, synthetic, organized evolutionary complexity happens. Why? It's a tough one to say. I mean, we're talking about why, If everything that exists does exist somewhere, part of that everything must be intelligent evolutionary complexity. Lo and behold, for some reason on our planet, for the reason that we're talking about, 6 billion years ago, there was a bunch of microbial cells in the primary ooze. A thunderbolt hit the Precambrian mud. The nitrogen molecules started inhaling some oxygen and hydrogen, and all of a sudden they got super high, started to smash together with the miracle of some kind of synthetic, periodic, molecular order and form. For some reason, the nitrogens liked the nitrogens, the nitrogens liked the hydrogens, and the nitrogen and hydrogen got together, and for some reason, oxygen molecules became O2, dioxygen, and for some reason, these are now molecules. For some reason, they liked each other. It has to do with, atomic chemistry is really beautiful. When you know that, we could get into it, an oxygen atom has a certain amount of what's called valent electrons. Every atom has a certain amount of electrons, and those electrons want stability. And they get that stability by connecting with another atom with another set of electrons. An oxygen atom by itself is a little, wow. I wish I knew the exact amount. I think it's got 2 valent electrons, or maybe 1. In any case, it's lopsided because it's only got 1. But when it finds another oxygen atom, the 2 balance each other out so that they spin nicely. Now, these oxygen atoms also have an electron spin, and they came together miraculously, or, just because infinity is, so it had to happen at some point. These oxygen molecules came together with another nitrogen and hydrogen thing. They came together and said, oh, wow, we work together really well, because that is just the nature of atomic chemistry. When you get into it, it's a beautiful science, and it's periodic. You know why they call it the periodic table? Because it periodically returns. I swear to God, that's actually why they call it that. Look it up. It's a miracle that the guy who discovered the periodic table, his name was like Mendeleev, and he was into the tarot. And he noticed that for some reason the tarot cards are also periodic. He believed that if you went to another planet in another galaxy with humans who could comprehend figures and forms and archetypes, there would be a tarot there too. Because the tarot is not just ancient, it's periodic. I get a lot of this information from Timothy Leary's Game of Life, if you're interested where a lot of this comes from. So, there are periodic forms in nature. The organized complexity of those oxygen molecules 6 billion years ago smashed together and made a living molecule, which we call an amoeba. Now, that amoeba had a membrane made of certain types of nitrogen and oxygen where they would only let more nitrogen in and they wouldn't let other things in. Carbon had to do with it, definitely, because we're carbon-based life forms. So carbon was in the mix there. You got carbon and nitrogen and hydrogen and oxygen in this cell, and these things like each other, these molecules, and they only like each other, which means that they started to stick together, and this thing became moving with the swing of a miraculous complexity that was like intelligent. You know, nature's intelligent. It just happened that way because it had to, because infinity is, and it has to express everything that could possibly be expressed, or else you and I wouldn't be having this discussion. So entropy, non-entropy started to appear out of entropy. Order started to appear out of all the chaos that is always a potential possibility. Of course, this miracle was just one cell in an infinite spiral of continuum that was probably happening on galaxies in multiverses all through space and time anyway. But in our particular thing, on our planet, an amoeba happened, where these molecules just started working in a complex way, where this amoeba, which only loved certain molecules, started moving as a complex molecular unit, moving around and eating other amoebas, because the smaller amoeba is made of the materials that the big amoeba needs. So the big amoeba came and ate the small amoeba. But oh shit, I didn't realize that there was another amoeba that was already there and it just ate me too. Now, amoebas got bigger and bigger in the ocean, right? And what eventually happened is that this complexity came to a point where the amoeba didn't think it was enough for it to move around just by the ocean waves, so it developed fins, which means that's when sharks came and marine life, and lo and behold, order came to be out of the chaos that was reality surrounding it. So, entropy, chaos, and non-entropy, order, wax and wane in cycles in order to embody the quantum multiplicities of the infinite. Lots of fun, fancy stuff here on How to Rock Spirit, folks. Now, the point is that for whatever reason, there seems to be a periodic manifestation in the same way that those amoebas had a membrane and a nucleus. A center, which was just a developing brain for all the neuroware surrounding the membrane of that permeable cell of that first amoeba. The complexity, the order, is in the ether as an archetype. It comes out in that same way with the nucleus and with the membrane because it's useful that way. It's practical, and that's just order. Intelligence, evolution, it just happens all by itself. And my whole point of that whole spiel, which is pretty cool, that was some good stuff just now. The whole point of that whole spiel was that I would contend that the Chinese Taoist healing arts are a periodic expression of this order, which also expresses itself in nature as cosmology, and as nature in the cycles, and as these cycles that the Taoists describe. Anyway, yeah, we'll just keep kind of rolling here. So, I don't know if you guys can kind of see in here, but something I'd like to say is that, this the metaphysical spiritual anatomy of the soul that I describe as Tat and Vedic astrology and all that stuff, and the planets going around in their certain cycles, these are also an expression of this natural organic outcropping of order out of non-order. They come in their cycles, they reach a point of ecstatic, blissful order and evolution, and they must also fall out. This is why the yogis say that they're yugas. The yogis of Indian Vedanta have known about these things that I'm talking about, which seem like really heavily scientific. You know, everything I just said is scientific. The yogis knew about this, and they described it through what's called the yugas, the ages, where there's the golden age, where order has achieved the peak of its wave, and then it falls out into the Kali Yuga, and even worse, where there's just chaos, you know, non-evolutionary complexity, and it has to go through those waves just like a sexual experience, you know, where if we could just be ecstasy all the time, well, maybe we can, you know, maybe there's a way to sort of do that, but generally speaking, for most of us humans, it's good to cultivate up and get that tasty, blissful sexual rapture, and then to let it go when it's gone. I mean, the Taoists have the idea that you don't even, you try not to ejaculate. You try to hold it in your body, and you circulate, and you don't let it end. It's very much a Taoist thing. But even the sexual experience, when they hold it in and they don't ejaculate, they still have the orgasm and the orgiastic sensation that the energy is coming from the spine, and it's there, and blah, good stuff. And then you can only be in that ecstatic crucible for so long. You can only take so many mushrooms and acid and smoke so much weed before you realize that you got to go on and do the next part of the wave, because that's what makes the peak of the wave tasty. That is why we have the bottom of the wave. It's why we have Saturn and Tamas and all the ugly parts of life. They make the sugar that much sweeter. For anyone who is interested in where I'm getting a lot of this shit, it's from Timothy Leary in his book, The Game of Life. If I can find that right now. I know I've got it here somewhere. Yes! So much of what I just said has come from this book by Timothy Leary called The Game of Life. I'm going to be doing a whole thing on Timothy Leary's Game of Life at some point. That was a great little thing there. Like, I might just make that whole thing into a whole other video on its own. Do 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 do.